Hi, everyone. Welcome to another year of Color in Tech. We're really excited to be doing this again. My name is Folake Shasanya, and today we have a great panel with two amazing experts you're going to really enjoy. This session is called US Expansion. Of course, very hot topic. Every startup founder wants to scale to the US. Everyone believes that there's, the path to unicorn. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up our two panelists, intro themselves, and then we'll get things started. How about I start off with me? Over to you, me, for an intro.
Hey, yeah, so I'm Cleland. I am the CEO and co-founder of Flair. What we do is leverage data to help organizations make meaningful progress on racial equity, with a mission to build a world in which all ethnicities can thrive. We actually expanded to the US in June of this year, so I'm one of the co-founders and I moved out. It was probably about 9 months in the making. And now I've been here for about 4 months.
Amazing. And then over
And
to
hi, my
Daniel.
name's Dan Glazer. I'm Thanks. So my name's Dan Glazer. I'm the London office managing partner of the Silicon Valley headquartered law firm Wilson Sonsini. I head up a team of about 30 U.S. and dual qualified UK-US corporate tech lawyers here in London that work with UK and European startups through their US life cycle. Launch, scale, raise money, exit in the United States. And we work with about 1,000 venture-backed UK and European startups at all points of that US life cycle. Everything from an accelerator stage company that goes to the Bay Area to raise a seed round, all the way up to working with companies coming out of the UK and Europe who look to IPO in the States. But the most common point that we usually start to engage, and what I expect we'll be talking about today, are companies that come to us with one of two questions. We're looking to launch in the US. What do we do next? Or we are looking to raise money in the US. What do we do next? And then we scale with them from there. Looking forward to chatting today.
Brilliant. And on my side, my name is Folake Shasanya. I'm an MD at Silicon Valley Bank. I head up our new strategic channels where we are focusing on ensuring that the innovation ecosystem works for everybody. So primarily, I have a focus to ensure that we're increasing access to knowledge, networks, and capital for female and overlooked founders. And typically, of course, that means doing everything from sessions like we're doing today all the way through to ensuring that we're networking them with VCs and other operators who've been there, done that. And then also obviously helping to make sure that we increase knowledge and we provide access to funding. So this session can be pretty topical because it's definitely front of mind for a lot of people, which in itself beggars, the question, which is like, why is the US seen as such a great place to expand to? So if you are a UK or European founder, it seems like the holy grail. And I guess that's some of what we want to unpack. Is that actually, the truth? Interestingly, we have a founder, me, who has actually recently moved to the US. So I'd like to get just your initial take on why you felt like this was something you wanted to do and it felt important for your business to do.
Sure. So I think in answer to your question, the US is the holy grail for certain businesses. I don't think it's necessarily the holy grail for all. For us, we are building a product in the racial equity space. Obviously, with the US's unique history around race, it's a country that I guess is a bit more advanced in their thinking, or at least their openness in having conversations around race. And we just felt that our best chance, our best market opportunity was here. And yeah, I guess it's been, I think the 4 months I've been here so far have kind of validated that. So you can feel the appetite is a bit stronger, the willingness to pay is bigger, but it comes with its challenges as well. It's a very kind of big market with loads of different kind of nuances, state by state. In terms of the appetite for the product, it tends to uh, be quite a polarized country, particularly around racial equity. So it's not all good, but yeah, I think definitely it's been a wise move so far.
Now, Dan, obviously you are sitting between, being an American based in London, you help people on both sides of the pond, as it were. So no doubt this is a very common topic for you, both in terms of the founder's personal narrative around why they want to move over, and then also from a business perspective. So could you just talk to us a little bit about what your experiences have been in terms of what is that motivating push-pull factor that ends up with founders thinking that this is something that's critical for their business growth?
Right. I mean, ultimately, what we find is that the companies end up being pulled to the U.S. out of the U.K. either to access the commercial markets, right? That the commercial upside there is potentially greater, or to access the public and private capital markets. In other words, I think the perspective is that if you can raise from U.S. investors, the potential size of the round, maybe the potential upside of working with the investors is potentially greater, and then the public capital markets, listing on the NYSE or the Nasdaq. I think what we find though is that the U.S. is not right for every company, right? But it is, but for the ones that it is right for the ones that can find, especially product market fit there, that the upside in the U.S. is potentially substantially greater than it is for companies in the UK and Europe. But where we do find companies get in a little bit of trouble is when they assume that because they've got product market fit in the UK or Europe, that they're going to have product market fit in the United States. I mean, I think as Nee alluded to, the US is a pretty big place. It's actually a lot of different sub markets. I mean, it's not as maybe as splintered as the EU, but then again, it's not as cohesive as the four home nations of the UK as well, right? It's 50 different states with 50 different tax and legal systems. And whether if you've got product market fit in one place, you don't necessarily have product market fit in another. But if you do, or if you've got product market fit in substantial parts of the U.S., your user growth can be a lot greater. Your customer traction can be a lot more substantial. The size of the contracts that you sign can be a lot bigger, but especially because the cost of getting the U.S. right is higher. It's important for founders and management coming out of the UK to make sure that you're being pulled into the US by customer traction or user growth, right? Rather than going to the US substantially, right? Or maybe a substantial investment in the US in terms of time and money in a way that could potentially damage the foundation of the business without a good bet, right? Or a good understanding that the US is the right next market. Or at least sending people over in a way that will allow the home market in the UK to keep building, keep scaling while you're testing out the US.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Daniel's mentioned there because I think it's really true. So with us, we decided to kind of de-risk the US bet by just having me move out initially. So we have like 17 in the team. Everyone else is still in the UK. We haven't gone and raised a big round of funding to expand to the US because we really want to validate the need for the product first before going full out on the US market.
Right. So I just think it's interesting that you as a founder have moved that. And I think it's to what Dan said, sometimes you might want to hire somebody, the contractor or somebody who's not yet necessarily a full employee of your UK entity to then build that operation. So what are some of the things to consider? What might be the implications to consider whether the founder, heads up in the US versus setting up a team, albeit temporary, in the US?
Happy to take it first. My view was that the most important thing to prove was demand, so customer demand. And in our view, there's no one that can sell better than a co-founder because like the authenticity is there, the depth of product knowledge. So we wanted to give ourselves the best shot of success or at least early validation. But not every startup is in that place. Like, it's not easy to move country. I'm kind of fortunate in that I don't have any kind of big commitments in the UK. And my partner was she was kind of open to us both moving to New York together. And I'm completely aware that it's not necessarily going to be an option for every single startup founder that they can just uproot their life and move however many thousand miles away. So you have to be realistic. But I would say that if you do have a chance as a founder, I personally think that you really should make the move yourself.
So what's actually surprised you
Yeah,
in
and
making that move?
What surprised me? Oh
Yeah.
gosh, so many things have surprised. So many things have surprised me. I think one was the cost to move. So the cost of, I guess, like immigration attorneys, just like how much it actually costs to move your whole life to a different country. So that's something that any founder that's planning to make that move really needs to factor in, like a real significant kind of like relocation expense. The second thing that's been a bit surprising, I guess, is probably how difficult it is to run a company when you are based 5 hours difference. Like it doesn't feel that much, but when you're there, it's like you really do feel it. And I think it's more than just the communication. It's also the fact that come 1 p.m. US time, I'm the only person in the company that's still working, and it can get lonely. You have to stay motivated. So that's been another surprise.
yeah, I mean, just to jump in on that, I think one of the, Nia, I think something that you did, which was very, very important, and was great planning, was to sort of pressure test at the beginning if moving what would the impact be of moving the founder of the business at that stage of growth to the United States, because if the founder can go to the U.S. and market test the United States and start to scale the U.S. Without materially hurting the growth of the UK business, that's great, right? Because oftentimes there is nobody who can pitch and sell the business better than that individual. And if you want to win in the United States, right, you really got to put your best players on the pitch, as it were, right? A lot of companies, though, it turns out, I mean, I think what they found is that if you do send your CEO or one of the primary founders to the U.S., it could end up hurting the growth of the UK business. And then you almost end up in a position where you're trying to build the business on both sides of the Atlantic simultaneously without having a sufficiently strong foundation in either. And that's really hard, right? And it sort of goes to the approach that we've often seen in terms of, well, what's successful for UK startups when they think about the US. And I think that there's a lot of companies that have had success with going early or going late. And what I mean by that, by going early, is that you move management over relatively early in the company's life cycle, right? And have them, let's say CEO, sales, et cetera, on the ground in the US. And then you sort of keep maybe engineering and other back office functions back in the UK. And you go to market and you build the product for the US market. You raise from US investors as essentially a homegrown US company, because you are in many respects a homegrown US company, and you scale from there. That's going early. Going late is sort of building the foundation in the UK, hitting product market fit in the UK, raising maybe your seed or even your A round in the UK, and then you get pulled into the US, either because you send people over to start pressure testing the market, or because you're selling in remotely and it's clear, right, that you need to be either hiring a local team or sending people over from HQ to build it out, right? It's the ones that sort of go in the middle, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier, is that what you end up weakening the foundation on both sides, and that's really hard. But in terms of maybe to just get to a question that we often get, which is to succeed in the U.S., does the CEO or primary founder need to move? And I think one of the things that we found, and we've been focusing specifically on working with UK startups going to the US since sort of around the beginning of the Tech City initiative back in 2010. Looking back at it over the past 12, 13 years or so, one thing has become clear. It is essentially impossible for a UK tech company to become a market leader or the market winner in the US without moving the CEO or someone with CEO level authority eventually to the US. Now, that's a very nuanced point. It doesn't mean that the CEO always has to go to the US. What it means is that if you ultimately think that the upside of the business is to win the US market in your sector, it is hard to win that away match, right, with your best players back at home.
So then,
Makes a lot of sense.
with that theme, I mean, obviously we've talked a little bit here around, the product, right? So like having the CEO or the founder go out there because you're trying to win the market and you're trying to either go very early to set up product market fit, or you've established in the UK and then you go there. How much of that is then driven by the dollars, right? So the actual investment opportunity that could allow you to then win that market. So would you say that some of the decisioning for the UK founders should also lie on whether or not they have appetite from the US-based investors versus Europe? How much, where is the relevance there, particularly in a world where we are seeing, of course, a number of US investors come over to Europe?
Yep. So one of the things that we found, and I'm going to speak in generalizations because I can point to exceptions all over the place, but I will speak in sort of some general rules. Putting aside the American funds in London, and there are about, I think, 36 now or so American funds in London, and they are there specifically to invest in UK and European companies, almost irrespective of what their current US profile is. But they're investing like local investors. Let's put them to one side. If you're sort of thinking about, okay, raising from US VCs who are based in America, and you are a UK company, generally speaking, American commercialization or operational expansion usually comes first. Then comes US investment in terms of at least leading the round, not the other way around. I think one of the things that we often talk to usually earlier stage UK startups about is I think that there's a perception that you raise your seed or your A from US investors and then you expand to the US. But that, again, if you define US investors as VCs who are in the US without a UK or European office, then that is pretty rare, right? And that usually what happens when you're raising seed or Series A from a US-based VC, you're usually seeing one of the following dynamics, right? Either the UK company has got senior employees or management on the ground in the US, so that the US VCs can leverage their expertise and their network to help those individuals build the business in the US. They've got substantial US traction. And let's say, for example, you're a B2B SaaS business. Let's say that you've got 2 million in revenue and you're going out to do an A, and 1.5 million is already coming from US investors. That could be pretty compelling, right? To especially if you've got really strong growth, right? Or it's somebody who has raised the management team, let's say, has previously raised from US investors, right? In other words, it's a repeat entrepreneur or repeat team of entrepreneurs, and they've already proven that they can build an American business. And so that it is seen as a better bet by US investors, right?
Definitely. And I was just going to add, I'm currently raising a round right now. And obviously I'm based in the US, only been here for 4 months, but I knew it wasn't realistic to try and raise this round from US VCs because we don't have any US sales just yet. We're kind of in the process of closing our first sales, and it just felt like a kind of an uphill battle that was likely not going to succeed. So even though I'm based in the US, I'm raising this round from the UK market.
Now that's super interesting. So I think that's going to be enlightening for a lot of founders who, as I mentioned at the top, kind of see the US as holy grail in a world where we feel like access to capital is deeper in the US. But to your point, I think if you're US based UK business, let's say, and you've built traction in your home country, then you're saying it sort of still makes sense to pursue the investors who understand your home market and where you're currently developing. Is that fair? So
Yeah.
just another follow-up for you then. Again, thinking about this theme about the two countries, there's obviously different personalities, let's say, about the two nations, albeit, the UK, Europe, obviously a lot of, number of countries, number of disparate behaviors, styles, etc. Same thing for all 50 states. Bit of a throwaway question here for you. What do you think is the advantage you're bringing as a Brit to the US in terms of your experience as a founder, and what do you think is going to actually make you have that special sauce that's going to be interesting for you to grow in the US?
Very interesting. I think just from a sales perspective, when I'm talking about racial equity, I think people are intrigued by the fact that I'm not a Black American talking about racial equity. I'm a Brit with a completely different lens, and sometimes they ask questions around kind of what is racial equity like in the UK, and I think it just gives you a bit of an advantage just being different, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say there's anything beyond that my Britishness really adds. Maybe it's just a person, I'm probably a bit less salesy. Just as a Brit, we're not as salesy as Americans, and maybe that lands quite nicely in sales conversations. It tends to be more of just a chat, which I think is resonating. Yeah.
So then, Dan, what would you say to that? Because I think most of us have been told that Americans are more direct, they're more bullish about their market, more salesy, right? So is that actually something to consider? Do you need to Americanize your approach, or is there something about authenticity that still allows you to succeed in the States? Obviously, there's no right or wrong, but I just love your take on how people can think about navigating that if they do expand.
Yeah, no, I think the interesting thing about the U.S. is that people come to the U.S. from all over the place. I mean, as they say, it is a nation of immigrants, and it's totally true. And there's nothing. I think Americans, broadly speaking, are willing to sort of do business and buy from anyone, but it helps to have an American mindset. And the American mindset doesn't mean that that you have to everything has to be overblown, right, and salesy, but it does help, right, to have a high level of confidence, right, when you're pitching, not necessarily hubris, right, but to be confident in what you are selling, to have to think big enough in terms of what the upside is when you're pitching to VCs, right? And there's no reason why you need to sort of let go of your Britishness to do that, but it does help to sort of lean into the sort of American approach of, hey, we are all here to succeed to the greatest extent possible, right? It's great to do business. We want to sell to each other and pitch and raise money, and there's no reason to sort of soft pedal that, right? There's a pretty big gap, or maybe not gap. It's a pretty big space between maybe underselling and soft pedaling the potential upside of what you're bringing to the market, and going with the we're going to the moon, bro. We're on a journey. You're like, you got to come with me, right? There's a big space in between there that I think could be very comfortably. That people can sit in, whether they're coming in from the UK or from France or from Germany or from India or Japan or anywhere, right? And I think, again, the nice thing about America is that it's a lot more of a mindset rather than whether anyone is, quote, an American or not, because ultimately what an American is much more centered around perspective and almost like a shared journey, right, than it is about, ethnicity or nationality.
So we're just out on time, but in keeping with that shared mindset, I'd like to give either of you the opportunity to obviously share with this community of founders and those who'll be listening any additional resources, advice, or follow-up points that you'd like them to be able to connect with after this conversation.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I found useful were the Index Ventures guide on US expansion, as well as the Boulderton Capital one. In terms of connecting with me, just feel free to drop me a LinkedIn request, Cleland. And yeah, aside from that, I think it's just about working out when there's the right time, or if it's the right if there is ever a right time for your particular business to move to the States, and to be very decisive once you've made the call. I think that's something that we did well. It's like we spent a bit of time working out if it made sense, and then we just went and did it. And next thing I know, I'm living in New York. So yeah.
Amazing.
And I guess what I would say is that, piece of advice when going to the US is if you're going to do it, and you've decided it's the right market, right? That you think you've got product market fit there, or will have product market fit, you want to go big, right? Is that, as I said, the upside is pretty substantial, and that companies are willing to buy tech in the United States and to pay for it if they feel that you've built the better mousetrap, right? American VCs are willing to give you great terms and invest substantial sums of money if you can show that you are a good bet for potentially returning the fund, which is what they generally are looking for when they invest, right? That's both of those, that commercial mindset, that investor mindset, that's looking for substantial upside. And if that's what you can bring to the table, the US is a ready and waiting market. I'm always happy to talk to UK and European founders about US expansion and fundraising. I'm reachable on LinkedIn at Daniel Glazer, or you can find me on the firm website. My email address is there. We have on Medium, which you'll easily find just by searching my name in Medium, is our US expansion and fundraising FAQ, which is the result of about 5,000 conversations that we've had over the past 13 years with UK and European startups. And we've sort of drilled down the 40 or so most common questions that they've had about US expansion and fundraising, and then linked to the answers. And it includes actually the links to the Index and Boulderton reports and many, many other resources that we found and have written over the years together, answering those most common questions about US expansion and fundraising. And again, that's available on Medium.
That's brilliant. And also on my side at SVB, obviously by name, we clearly want to look after clients on both sides of the pond. So to the extent people are thinking about US expansion and what that means from banking perspective and connections with VCs in the whole of market, again, I'm reachable on LinkedIn. We can also, you can also find some of our conversations like this that we've done in the past, also with Dan actually, definitely a friend of SVB. So if you look up events.svb.com, coming to America, you'll find more detailed sessions like this all over the web. But again, we're reachable on LinkedIn, or just shoot me an email. So with that, I'd like to wrap up. Thank you very much to both of you for a very informative chat. No doubt you'll be getting bombarded with questions. And I'd like to thank obviously the Color and Tech team for having us. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Coming in this story.
I'm Christiana, I'm the co-founder of Eats and Beats. My passion is bringing people together with food and music. We decided to start Eats and Beats because we wanted to find an avenue that can bring people together, and we just found that food is always the best way to do that. We chose to set up a domain with GoDaddy, and we just felt it was important to have a professional email address. We do a lot of goodie bags for our events. It was a bit difficult to be contacting all these brands and be having like a personal Gmail or Hotmail account. I was really impressed by the customer service. The person I spoke to was really helpful, and no question is a silly question. Client care is so important to me, and I was just immediately impressed, and I just felt comfortable to put my business in the hands of GoDaddy.
For the help and tools you need to grow online, GoDaddy.